Well, good evening, everybody. It should be Live Day Challenge 28, but I missed last night, and I woke up in the middle of the night feeling really horrible about that, and then I just let it go because stuff happens. So I'm going to make today day 27, and today we're going to talk about what is your brand or branding yourself. And hi there. And so what I want to talk about tonight is this exercise that happened towards the end of this year with me when I was off on I think they called it a REINVENT course. And I think we talked about it before, but basically they force you into thinking about your year already in completion. And there's something about that visualizing, but also putting into your own words and in writing what you accomplished in the year that you're in. And so I did that towards the end of the year, and the biggest thing that happened when I stood up and told everybody what I was going to do in 2019 as if it had already happened was there was no possibility that I could have done the things I said I did in 2019 without quitting my job. So that was a really big deal because I had been with the same organization for 20 years and pretty much doing the same, leadership positions for that long. And it was very comfortable and a good job and very familiar. At the same time, my level of stress and imbalance was pretty out of control. And we've talked about before, how sick I got and how much I ignored what was happening in my body. Because I just believe stress is stress. You just, jobs like big corporate jobs, you're flying, you're working for a lot of people. Stress comes along with that kind of job. And so I didn't think that it was unrealistic that I was in a stressful situation, but some things happened that caused even more of an imbalance for me and really started spinning me out of control. So when we had to stand up in December and say, what is 2019? What did you do in 2019? There was no way that I could stand up and be honest with everybody that was watching without saying that, this month I quit my job. And then I proceeded to talk about some other things that I did in 2019. So coming home so very clear about the fact that I just had to do it, that there was no waiting, that I couldn't wait 3 more months, that I had already talked myself into staying a whole nother year, and that I was further and further behind in actualizing my big dream, which was to get out and do some public speaking and to consult and help healthcare professionals with management, with how to mentor and train their nurses. So all those things were part of the package. And had I not been brave enough to stand up and say, I'm done, I have to jump off this, even though it was so scary, none of what's happening now would have happened. So I'm not saying that everybody listening or in the future if you listen that I'm telling you to quit your job. I'm saying that sometimes going after your big dream means you have to change what you're currently doing, even though it sounds really scary. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Now I titled this tonight, what is your brand? And the reason that I wanted to ask you that question is we all kind of come with an identity. We, work can be a huge part of our identity, our families. Maybe you're doing great and you have a really nice balance and work is something you love, but it's not your identity. You're surrounded by friends and family and you have a purpose that is beyond your job and everything's great. But if you're somebody like me who had a whole lot of my self-worth tied to a job and a paycheck, and the very idea that I could handle something like that on my own was a super scary thing. At the same time, there's no way that I would be doing what I was doing with my job currently. So the branding part of it is what do you tell people? What's your story? If you had to take 60 seconds and explain, what you do you talk about like kind of who you are? What do you do as in action things? I'm a nurse, I'm a mom, I'm a caregiver, I'm a stay-at-home mom, whatever that is that how you lead with the question, what do you do? Or is it bigger than that? Do you run a nonprofit? Do you try to fundraise? Do you spend a lot of your time in community or in your faith? There are things that define you, and it's pretty important for you to be really sure that you're doing you're doing your purpose. Because if you're pretending to be something you're not, or you're in a position that causes a kind of a dilemma in your work and life, it will creep up on you, and it will come back to haunt you as you get older. So branding yourself is pretty important. What is your purpose? What do you spend your time doing? What are you dreaming about? What is the bigger purpose that you're shooting for? And that's a pretty important thing to understand. A really quick, tricky thing you can do to get at this a little bit is if you had to fit your purpose or what you do in your life on a bumper sticker, what would you say? What would you say about yourself? What would be your bumper sticker, your brand? Now, we're talking about values, purpose, beliefs, and branding that way. There's also how you show up, and I think it's pretty interesting. I managed a whole lot of people that were quite a bit younger than me. As a matter of fact, they could have been my children, so millennials mostly. But I would kind of watch how people would show up and how they would behave. And I think that it's pretty important, especially with social media and with having a lot out there that you can project to other people about yourself. It's pretty important to understand how you want to show up. And I was thinking of a time when I traveled into a hospital to work with a nurse and another person, and the nurses in my position or in my company were supportive nurses. They didn't have to wear scrubs. They didn't necessarily have to look like a nurse when they were in the hospital. But you got to choose pretty much how, your own definition of professionalism, your own way of showing up, of branding yourself. And I think it's pretty important to be thoughtful about that. And I showed up one day in a manager position to work with these people, and one of them was in a sundress with a sleeveless sundress, and it went all the way to the ground, and she had flip-flops on, and she was going to be working in this hospital. And it was a pretty important defining moment for her, because how she was branding herself was, I'm just sort of here on vacation. I don't take my job seriously. I'm probably breaking the hospital rules by being here with open-toed flip-flops on, and really just an overall sense of sort of just not professional. So I think about that with our younger group, and I also think about it just in the fact that we're in public positions where we have to show up a certain way, and we are defining who we are by how we show up, how we are dressed, whether our hair is combed, how much we look like we cared about the day. And so that's another way to look at your brand and how you want people to see you. Well prepared, like you care, serious, thoughtful. What are you shooting for? What's that bigger purpose for you? So that's sort of it for tonight. I know it was a longer night, but we will go into a little bit more detail tomorrow on this same topic. But I would end tonight with, that question. If you were asked, say we are here a year from now in this very spot, and we're talking about what we had accomplished. what would you say? You know, what do you want to get accomplished in 2019 that you can start working on right now and make it happen? And know that by the end of that year, we're sitting here and you're talking about everything that you accomplished and what you're most proud of. So that's the night, and it's all about what is your brand. Think about that. What's your purpose, your bigger purpose in life? And I will be back tomorrow for day 28 do-over since I missed last night. All right, everybody, have a great evening.